His body was found encased in concrete in a Fulton storage unit. The question, who poured the concrete over Carl DeBrodie's body and stashed him out of sight? That has been the target of an intense investigation over the past 11 weeks. ABC 17's Jordana Marie has been digging through hundreds of pages of court documents, looking into who was responsible for keeping him safe. And Jordana, you've come up with names not heard of before and possible laws that were broken.
In that mound of documents, I found a list of people responsible for his daily care. I also looked at one serious potential violation of state law and talked with the woman who helped raise Carl, who left no doubt about what she thinks happened.
I think that somebody lost it on him, and that's how he died.
Mary Martin is a former guardian for Carl. She took care of him most of his childhood until he was 21. Martin said DeBrodie is developmentally challenged. She told me he doesn't speak well, but can get his point across to those who know him. She said he went to live at Second Chance Homes, an independent supported living facility, about 9 years ago. And that's where she says things started to go south for Carl.
When he went into Second Chance, he was put on meds. And it upped and upped and upped till he had the Thorazine shuffle. I mean, he was not Carl anymore.
On April 17th, Fulton police received a missing persons report from Second Chance. They quickly realized Carl had been missing a lot longer than the workers reported.
We conducted a foot search, a search with drones, a tracking dog from the Highway Patrol.
A week later, his body was found encased in cement in a storage facility.
With the decomposition of the body, this certainly probably been there for months, probably.
So when did Carl go missing? Who was responsible for making sure he was alive and healthy while living at Second Chance? According to former Cole County prosecutor Bill Tackett, everyone.
It's everyone who touches the oversight of him.
I've been looking through hundreds of documents from various agencies looking for who would be responsible for Carl. At the top of that list, Carl's court-appointed legal guardian, Callaway County Public Administrator Karen Dye.
She would be one of the people in the network of people, of players that were responsible for protecting Carl DeBrodie.
Next on the list, the case manager responsible for monthly face-to-face visits with Carl. In May, ABC 17 News reported Callaway County Special Services determined that employee was not meeting monthly with Carl despite filing reports stating otherwise. That employee has been fired.
There are criminal statutes for false reporting, filing a false report. There's forgery.
Right now, no one with CCSS has been charged, but it is possibly part of the larger investigation. We also know Rachel Rowden owns Second Chance Homes. Her name has not been mentioned in the investigation to this point. Second Chance Homes was an independent supported living facility with only 2 or 3 residents at a time living there.
All she had to do was drop in. I mean, she didn't have that many clients.
ABC 17's Deborah Kendrick and I went to Rowden's house earlier this week. I wanted to ask her about the last time she saw Carl, if she knew what happened, how she thought Carl's body ended up encased in cement. Her daughter said she was out of state. Can you tell us anything about what's going on with the Carl DeBrodie case?
Not liberty to say.
At the bottom of the responsibility totem pole, the people working in the home, day in and day out. Through court documents and police reports, ABC 17 News has determined Sherry Paolo was one of the employees at Second Chance from as far back as 2011 to as recently as 2016. One court document has her listed as a qualified disability professional at Second Chance in 2014, and a police report puts her in the home in October of 2016 after a resident allegedly threw punches at her and her husband. I spoke with neighbors in the area who told me they actually saw Sherry Paolo at the home the night before Carl was reported missing. Now, more than 2 months have passed since Carl was reported missing and his body was found. But still, there have been no arrests, no named suspects, no timeline of when justice for Carl will be served.
This is one that needs to be compartmentalized and worked through slowly but surely.
Tackett said the key to ensure justice is properly served for Carl is to find out what happened before he was reported missing.
What you're hearing is the chief of police talk about the decomposition of the body being months. And if you do the math on it, it doesn't work out.
Tackett has not been involved in this investigation, but he did say if this case was presented to him based on the facts we know so far, he'd likely take this to a grand jury before deciding who to ultimately prosecute and for what crimes. We know Callaway County has a standing grand jury, but it's not known if this investigation has been presented to them.
Since Carl DeBrodie's body was found encased in concrete back in April, ABC 17's Deborah Kendrick has been looking into his guardianship struggle. Tonight, the woman who fought Carl's court battles is talking with us for the first time. And Deborah, Mary Beck tells you she saw a conflict of interest in how Carl ended up at an independent supported living facility.
Those are just a couple of key points in the hundreds of court documents I've dug through. But for the woman who represented Carl in court, nothing in those documents convinced her that he should have been in any facility.
It never made sense why she opposed adoption by the Martin.
For 3 years, attorney Mary Beck represented Carl DeBrodie in the courtroom while Mary Martin fought to regain custody of him. For that reason, we have to go back to the beginning. Carl DeBrodie was born to Carolyn Summers, who had mental limitations. From the time he was 12 to 21, Carl lived with Mary Martin. It was the spring of 1997 when Martin first saw Carl at a bus stop in Cole County.
He had a broken arm, bottleneck glasses, and I came around the corner in the school bus and he just waved and smiled, and I cried.
In 2008, Callaway County declared Carl a disabled adult, so the public administrator Karen Dye became his legal guardian. 1 year later, Martin petitioned to the court to be his guardian, but was denied. It was that same year Carl came to Martin's home for Christmas. Martin told me she noticed bruising and burn marks on his body, so she hotlined the abuse. And that's when she told me things changed.
I would call, they wouldn't answer, caller ID had come out. I would call from another line to fool them, and they'd hang up on me.
Martin says Dye stopped her from visiting Carl. Court documents show Carl said someone at Second Chance hurt him, but it couldn't be proven after investigation. In 2011, when Carl turned 25, Martin tried to adopt him in Cole County, so Beck supervised a visit at Martin's home.
Carl walked into the house like he owned it. He opened the door, he walked into the kitchen, he got himself a drink, he petted the dogs.
Beck tells me seeing Carl with the Martins, she knew it's where he should be.
Compared to his Second Chance interactions,
completely different.
What was the difference?
The second time I saw him, he was crying. He kept trying to hide his face.
Despite Beck's recommendation, Cole County denied the adoption, saying Carl's consent was required, but as his legal guardian, Dye refused to allow the adoption. I visited Karen Dye's office to find out why, and she immediately refused to talk to me about this case. Beck contends Dye stopped the adoption process for reasons that could be a conflict of interest.
This is in my guardian ad litem report to the court, so it's not confidential information.
Okay.
There was a financial tie between Karen's office and Second Chance Homes.
That tie, Beck says, is because the legal guardian's deputy was working at Second Chance while working at the Callaway County Public Administrator's office.
A real conflict of interest to have a facility for incapacitated adults have a financial tie to a main worker in the public guardian's office.
In a document obtained by ABC 17 News from the Missouri Department of Mental Health, Second Chance was bringing in an average of $592,000 each year from 2009 to 2017, totaling more than $5 million over a 9-year span. Most of Carl's life is laid out in the more than 100-page of court documents. Those are just the ones I could get my hands on. I was refused all the other documents that are currently sealed for the investigation. Some testified during his adoption process that his life improved with the structure offered by Second Chance. In 2010, one former guardian says she saw positive change in Carl. In 2012, those court documents on the adoption show something different. Documents suggest Paulo and the house manager exerted immense influence over Carl's response to the Martins' name or even the idea of adoption, saying he was distraught. crying, screaming, and shaking his head no when the Martins were spoken about. After 2014, Carl never visited the Martins' home again. I went to try and talk to Sherry Paulo to get more information. Through court records, I found her address.
Sorry to bother you. Do you know who your neighbors are next door?
Neighbors confirm Paulo lives here, but said it's been a while since they've seen her. I knocked on her door twice, but no answer. We call every day on this investigation, and as of today, no one has been arrested or charged for the disappearance and death of Carl DeBrodie.
It's been 3 months since Carl DeBrodie, the developmentally disabled man, was found dead in a Fulton storage facility after being reported missing from his assisted living home. Our special coverage continues tonight as ABC 17's Joe McLean examines the statewide system that was responsible for Mr. DeBrodie's care and where we found it may be flawed.
The suspicious death of Carl DeBrodie has sparked a complex investigation by state and federal agencies. We still don't know how he died or who placed his body in concrete. We do know the 31-year-old was developmentally disabled and receiving care from the state of Missouri. Now, this case may have revealed a flaw in the oversight that exists in that system, allowing rules to be subverted and even ignored.
Well, it's important for them to see that they're okay. I mean, you can assume everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing, but there's no guarantee that they are.
While digging into how the system operates, I found, and experts agree, that this is a weakness that played a role in what happened to Carl DeBrodie, a system built upon the assumption that everyone is performing like they should. You may remember ABC 17 News reported 2 months ago when a case manager who oversaw the Second Chance home in Fulton was fired by their agency, Callaway County Special Services, following DeBrodie's disappearance less than a month earlier. That agency was contractually obligated to perform monthly face-to-face check-ins with DeBrodie called support monitoring visits.
Those individuals are required to have eyes-on visits once a month from the case manager. Doesn't matter if they're a state case manager or a local case manager.
While the reports were being filed, it's alleged that the visits were not actually taking place. That's what led to the employee's dismissal. Legal experts say that's not only a breach in state protocol, but criminal fraud. However, that's just one person that appears to be at fault. Our question tonight, who else was supposed to look after Carl? To answer that, I talked to Valerie Hoon, the head of the Department of Mental Health's Division of Developmental Disabilities.
So everything in this system is very individualized. It focuses on each individual's needs, each individual's supports that already exist in the community.
Hoon showed me this diagram outlining the oversight that exists within the division. On the top right, where it says individual, in this case, that's Carl DeBrodie. The service provider is his independent supported living facility, Second Chance Homes in Fulton, and the case management provider, that's Callaway County Special Services. These colored lines represent the systems of oversight the division has in place. As you can see, only 3 of them have direct or secondary contact with individuals like Carl. First, there's the licensing process that makes sure the provider can properly care for the clients, but it only requires secondary contact with the clients, and the recertification occurs every 2 years. The state also performs quality enhancement reviews during which the department pulls documents for 400 randomly selected cases. Again, at most, this check is performed once a year. Julie Walden is the founder and CEO of the privately owned Boone Supported Living, a service provider that also handles cases for the state of Missouri.
I think that the caseloads for the support coordinators in particular are too high. And so it's hard for them to do all the things that they want to do for the people.
That leaves these orange lines that represent the monthly service monitoring visit by the case manager CCSS we mentioned earlier, the one that was not getting done. But that's just inside the division. I also checked with other entities to see if any other oversight exists. CCSS, for instance, is part of the Missouri Association of County Development Disability Services, an organization that partners with the Department of Mental Health. The association's director told me via email, quote, "The Department of Mental Health has oversight responsibilities by statute, and it is cooperating with law enforcement. We do not have a role in that investigation." I also talked to the director of Missouri's Developmental Disabilities Council, a federally funded board that reviews the Department of Mental Health and makes recommendations to improve its operation.
But we don't delve that deep into the oversight. We provide advice and on how the service system, how families feel that the service system should be driven.
The Department of Mental Health is, of course, a part of the governor's administration. It's ultimately up to him or her to review and change policy.
It can be challenging making sure all those needs are met and those rights are protected.
We checked today and there's no new information on the ongoing investigation, but to keep up with the latest, go to our website and click on the Case of Carl DeBrodie tab.